Hi friends, welcome back to Building in a Small Town. My guest today is Robin Bostrom. Robin is the director of Empower Rural Iowa, a program housed within the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Robin was born and raised in Hawkeye and still resides in rural northeastern Iowa. You'll hear about her time running a rural independent grocery store and how she started looking at data before it was cool, how she got into economic development, and details about the grant programs that have just launched for Empower Rural Iowa. Stay tuned until the end of the episode to find out what her side hustle is. She and I have a lot in common. Before we get into the episode, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for listening and ask you to make sure that you're subscribed on whatever your listening platform. I recently heard a wild statistic that over 50% of podcast listeners start listening to a new podcast after being recommended it by a friend. On that note, could you share the show with someone that might enjoy it? It's a simple, free way to help support the show. A special reminder that my next adventure, The Backyard, is opening September 27th, 28th, and 29th. I'm excited to be a stop on the map for the 2024 Fall Central Iowa Junk Jaunt. Come check out the shop and the beautiful backspace that is currently being landscaped by my husband, as I record this. Hope to see you there. Welcome to Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. All right, hello, and welcome back to the Building in a Small Town podcast. Today, I am joined by the director of Empower Rural Iowa with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. I always get that wrong. I always want to say association or something else, but it's authority. Robin Bostrom. So thank you so much for coming to Collins and sitting down to chat with me.
Well, awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this conversation.
Yeah. So you guys have I imagine the Empower Rural Iowa program is like any other Iowa economic development program where it's got a lot of things under one umbrella. So can you kind of run me through what some of the things that you oversee as the director of Empower Rural Iowa?
Yeah, certainly. So we are housed in the Iowa Economic Development Authority under the Center for Rural Revitalization. And that involves the Empower Rural Iowa program, of which I just became the director in March. So kind of a new gig for me, but I'm super excited. My background is I grew up in rural Iowa. I've done rural economic development my entire life, so I'm super excited for this new opportunity. But we're actually created by an executive order from Governor Reynolds about 7 or 8 years ago. And then just last fall, that executive order was kind of revamped. We started with 3 task forces with a bunch of members from all across the state, rural placemakers and rural businesses and service providers. And then the new executive order that was signed last October has narrowed things down to 1 task force of 25 members, and we are co-chaired by the Lieutenant Governor and by a member of the Iowa Rural Development Council. So we do a lot of partnership work with the Iowa Rural Development Council, which a lot of folks are familiar with. But really all of the work we do, we have an annual appropriation that comes from the legislature, and all of that money goes into grant programs to help lift up rural efforts across the state.
Gotcha.
So essentially, that's what we do. We provide technical assistance. As I said, we have a lot of partnerships that we do with folks, but the annual appropriation from the legislature all goes to grant funds.
Nice. And so you are going to have somebody new at the helm then with Adam Gregg stepping down. That hasn't been announced yet, I don't think, has it?
No, there's been no announcement there. But yeah, very soon we'll have somebody new kind of helping to co-direct things. So we'll look forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah. Okay, so you guys have a whole bunch of technical assistants. You have lots of different grant programs. What do you guys define as rural?
So yeah, related to rural, and there are lots of different definitions of that. Our definition is a population less than 20,000, or if you're thinking about a countywide project, it needs to happen in one of the 88 least populated counties in the state. So again, we're really looking to go to those places where maybe there aren't those types of services available. So, but again, population under 20,000 and not a city that is contiguous, that shares a border with a city of a population more than 40,000. So, if you're one of those...
if you're Urbandale or something like that.
Yeah, if you're Urbandale or that sort of thing, sorry, but you're not our target market. We really are focusing on, and I would say the majority of communities that we're working with are probably have a population under 10. So we've done a lot of work in the really more small communities where there are maybe more challenges and not as many resources.
Okay. So, it's always a challenge when I have people like, what is rural to you? If you say, well, it's just under 20,000, something like an Urbandale or something like that. Technically, if it's just a pure population definition, that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So Bill Menner, mutual acquaintance, mutual friend of ours, he says, you'll know it when you see it. You'll know what rural is when you see it. So I think that's why I wanted to start there. So you grew up in rural Iowa.
That's correct.
Where?
So I was born and raised in Hawkeye, Iowa, northeast Iowa, Fayette County. Population when I was a kid was like 529 friendly people. But when I grew up, we had 2 small grocery stores. We had a hardware store. My grandma worked in the hardware store. And so I loved just like going up to visit her in the hardware store. And my dad was a self-employed carpenter. So he did a lot of work for people all over the area. And I consolidated school district. I went to school in West Union, graduated from high school there, married my high school sweetheart. And my husband's family had operated an independent grocery store in the community of West Union for 60 years. So after we were married for a couple of years, my husband and I purchased the store from his family, from his father-in-law, and we were the 3rd generation owner-operators of the independent grocery store. And for a while, there were 2 grocery stores in West Union, and then, markets were starting to change, and then it was down to just us. And then I want to say 4 or 5 years after we started running the grocery store, you had never really heard the word supercenter. And pretty soon it was like our supplier was coming to us and saying, hey, you got to pay attention. There's somebody new in the marketplace and it's going to be difficult. So, they did everything they could to kind of help us learn about the Walmarts of the world. And now there is a Walmart Supercenter 25 miles in every direction of West Union. So we sold our store about 18 years ago. But even before we sold the store, I was, we were always involved in the chamber and, I was on the chamber board, and you're involved in every board and organization in a small community because that's what it takes. And so after we sold our store, we both worked for the gentleman. We sold to another family operator that just had more locations. And we both worked for him for a while. I worked for him for 2 years. My husband worked for him for like 16. But I then took a job at the Chamber of Commerce, and then I got really involved in helping businesses and do all of that. Some of them my peers or people that I just had really admired when we were growing up in the community and running a business. And so then I worked economic development for Fayette County. So I was the economic development director. I did trail work with the Turkey River Recreational Corridor. Just kind of all of those things. We applied to become a Main Street community in West Union, and then I served as the director of the Main Street program in West Union for 10 years, and then I joined the state Main Street team in Des Moines, and boom, now here I was on that team for 10 years, and then this opportunity opened to do the Empower, which was kind of like calling back to me. I'm like, oh, this is what I have done my entire career. This is how I've grown up. I'm going to see if I can give this a shot. And I was super excited to have the opportunity. So here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we first met at the, wasn't it the Iowa Rural Development Summit? Yes, this April.
Yes, but actually, I am certain that I saw you when you pitched your cricket business at a business pitch contest. It was in Des Moines at the Iowa Event Center. I don't know if it was...
Okay, so it was probably, in that case, it was probably the Iowa Farm Bureau Young Farmers
Yes, I think
Conference.
that was it.
Yes, that was 2020, like maybe a month before everything shut down.
Yeah, I just remember like sitting at a table and listening to you talk about, I grow crickets, and thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I think that's the first time we met. And then we reconnected again, yes, at the Rural Development Summit.
Yes, we sat next to each other at a breakout session. And you were telling me a little bit about the grocery business. And one of the things that I thought was super interesting and I wanted to ask you about was you guys kind of did a loyalty program at your grocery store before loyalty programs were cool, and you were collecting a whole bunch of data while you did that. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I look back now and I think, gosh, we were probably trailblazers and we didn't even know it.
Didn't mean to be.
No, we didn't mean to be. We were just, again, as an independent operator, we were trying to do everything we could to make ourselves stand apart and be different from what people would experience when they went to the supercenters, because we couldn't compete with them on price. You just can't. And so we developed a card program. It was called, our grocery store was Bostrom Super Value, and it was the Bostrom's Advantage card. And it was through that program, I was able to use our POS system and really see and start to analyze what was happening with our customers. And one of the most eye-opening things for me was shortly after, we had the program up and running, and we polled our top 50 customers, and I felt like I lived at the grocery store. You're there when you own it. You're there when the coolers go crazy in the middle of the night. And, between the two of us, we were probably there between 50 and 60 hours a week. And I remember looking at this list of the top 50 customers, and there were like 25 names on there that I didn't know who these people were. And I thought, oh my God, I felt like I knew everybody, because, everybody has to come to the grocery store at some point. And, it just blew me away that I didn't know who they were. And it made me realize that we needed to pay attention to that. So for example, if Jane Smith, who's spending $200 a week with me, has a problem, I need to know who she is so that I fix it. And so that was kind of when I got turned on to data and to understand that you got to pay attention to what the numbers are telling you. And it can just really help you make better informed decisions. And so one of the roles that I played on the Downtown Resource Center when I was on the Main Street team is I was the small business specialist, but I did a good majority of the market analysis, pulling data for communities and helping them analyze it and understand it. And so I became a numbers nerd and a data nerd. And there's just a lot of power in it when you can read it and understand it, and you're not guessing about things. And so we really learned how to lean into our data. And I was a little disappointed when we sold our store. The new owner just said, oh, nope, we're not going to do that program anymore. And I remember thinking, oh, you really should keep this because you can learn a lot from this. But again, it just wasn't going to be his thing. So
right.
It kind of went away.
Well, and the example that you gave, I think in that first conversation that we had, was there was some new regulation that had come in with tobacco and cigarettes in the state of Iowa that I think then required it to be behind the counter. I don't know. This was before my time of paying attention to any of that, I suppose. I would have been really, really underage. But and you guys were trying to decide, is this going to be worth the hassle of us, complying with these regulations, or do we just get rid of cigarettes, let it be somebody else's problem? And what you found out is, it was something crazy about the total number of your top shoppers. They were coming and buying cigarettes weekly. And so, you have to make that decision then. They're not going to come back to your store then if you don't have the thing that they're...
Exactly. It was that kind of data that we looked at. So what was happening is the state of Iowa had passed new laws, and you were going to need to card everybody, and they had to be behind a locked cabinet. And so that meant we were going to have to kind of redo our front area and where our display area was for cigarettes to make sure that we were complying with the new laws. And I remember saying to my husband, let's just not do this anymore. We don't need to sell cigarettes. You and I don't smoke. We don't like it. Let's just do away with it. And then I just, something told me to pull a report and just take a look. And yeah, there again, I did. And I went, oh my gosh, some of our really top customers are buying that product here. And so if they now can't get it here and they have to go somewhere else, then will they do more of their shopping there? Will we lose them? And it helped us make that decision on, okay, this is not a product we should eliminate. We need to understand what our customers want. And it helped us make that decision. And we use that data on so many other decisions on products and things that were good sellers, and also just training our people to understand, you may have that customer that you see every day, Joe, who came in every day to get a donut and a cup of coffee in our deli, and he was the nicest person, and he would talk to all the cashiers. And when you ask them, like, who's a great customer? Well, we see Joe every day. Well, yeah, we do. But we're not making as much profit off of Joe as we are Jane Smith, who's here, who we don't know who she is. And, I, through analyzing the data, could find out that some of our top customers were shopping with us on Sundays. And so I started working on Sundays to connect names and faces and to make sure that I knew who those people were, because, as I said, if they had a problem or an issue, we needed to solve it. And I'm still going to be there and say hi to Joe, who gets his donut and coffee every day. But how you treat them, they're all important, but at different levels. And I think that was one of the things the data really taught me, is that you need to understand who your customer is. And I think that is so key for every business, no matter what your size, and especially more so for the smaller businesses, because we don't maybe have as much margin or money to play with in making decisions, and everything that we put on our sales floor has got to turn a profit for us at some level. Otherwise, you can get upside down real quick.
Right. Yeah. I just, like I said, that was our quick little conversation in between sessions, and that really stuck with me. I was like, oh, I just need to hear more about that. So very interesting. You guys, like I said, you were trailblazers and you didn't even know it. You didn't intend to be. It just kind of happened. So, okay. So you guys sell the store. You're both moving on to other opportunities. You stayed in the store and worked for that family for a little bit.
Yes.
Is that right?
Did.
Okay.
Yeah, we both did.
So you did that. And then this economic development, working with the chamber opportunity, comes up for you. Now, is that like Fayette? Was that a county-wide chamber?
It started, it was kind of a combination job. So it started as serving as a part-time marketing director for Fayette County Economic Development, and then the chamber director for the community of West Union. So it was kind of like a joint position, and those entities were housed together in one office, which was a really smart partnership. And then as things transitioned, the community was looking for more technical support, and they made an application to the Main Street program. And so then we applied to Main Street, which is a program through the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Communities need to apply to the program. It's part of a larger program with Main Street America. And right now, Iowa has, I believe, about 53 communities that participate in that program. One of the requirements of the program is that depending on the size of your community, you need to have at least, for my community size, we needed to have at least a part-time paid director who's organizing the volunteers and the efforts and the economic development activities that you're doing. And so that just kind of became part of my joint duties. I was a combination chamber Main Street director. Then the county economic development director left, and that got added to my plate. So at some point I was doing chamber, Main Street, county economic development, trail work. In a small community, sometimes you wear a lot of hats. And so I was just doing lots of very broad things. And we had a small staff. There were 3 of us. We also had tourism in our office. So again, those of you who live in rural, this is nothing new to you. You kind of do it all. And that's what we were doing.
Well, so this has never really dawned on me, and I've never really thought to ask this, but so like a Main Street, like, West Union Main Street, who funds that? Like, how are you getting paid? Like, where are the funds coming from, to pay you as a Chamber of Commerce for the county? Like, how does that get funded?
Yeah, so we were funded by the city. When you're a Main Street program in the state of Iowa, your city has to have some skin in the game, so they have to fund you. So the city was funding us at a small level. We had investors, so a lot of businesses were contributing. We also had a good portion of residents that were funding us. They were doing, like a 3-year pledge to our program. And then you're doing general fundraising activities. You're having a charity golf tournament. You're having, all those sorts of things. But we operated on a pretty small budget for a community of our size. And so, yeah, that's where the funding comes from. And then you have the opportunity to apply for grants that might be available through the state. And so we took advantage of those opportunities in a couple of ways too.
Okay.
Building renovations and other things. So.
Got it. So then it's I guess as I think about that and I think through it, Chamber of Commerce is essentially funded by its members. Like that's how they survive. I got to imagine after you get to a certain size, and yes, you become eligible for other grant opportunities and things like that. But I had never really thought about, who funds these programs because they're not necessarily city or county or, anything associated in that respect. It's never thought about it.
Yeah, we had just lots of investors and people who really saw the value of our program and were great supporters. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do that for a little while. 10 years, did you say?
10 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, then you moved on to the state office?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the state of Iowa has one of the largest state Main Street staffs in the nation. It's just a really well-run program. And a good staff. But they, at that point, about 10 years ago, were adding another business specialist to their team, realizing that they really needed to have somebody on board who could provide technical assistance and services to small businesses in the Main Street communities that were participating in the program. So I was hired to be one of the two. We had 2 business specialists at that time. And so I joined the state team and started working with that team, doing all sorts of things in communities. As I said, I did a lot of data, pulling down data and research for communities, helping them understand their markets, their drive times, what were they great at, where were their sales leakage, what are people leaving the community for? So I did a lot of training to help people understand that, the local team and Main Street volunteers to understand that. Did a lot of classes and trainings for small businesses. So everything from marketing to social media to visual merchandising. My degree from college is in fashion merchandising, interestingly, and I worked a little bit for the Maurice's Corporation and a small independent boutique right out of college. And then again, I had a lot of retail background from running a grocery store, so I understood that side of things. And so I was just there to help small businesses, and had the opportunity to also administer a grant program for small businesses called Open for Business. And Main Street communities in the state of Iowa can apply. It's kind of like Shark Tank Main Street style. It's a business pitch contest, but really helped me learn there's so many cool things happening in small businesses across the state. And when I say small, most of them are micro businesses, really, maybe 1 or 2 people, maybe they employ 10 people. But most of them are what I really consider, mom and pops. And that's my love. I really love to help those types of folks.
Yeah. So the winner this year was Time and Spice out in Burlington.
Yes.
Yes. So they used to carry my crickets. That's why I know that. That's why I saw it on LinkedIn. So I know they won. And then I believe, I can't remember if Megan Osborne Blue Moon Holistics out of Nevada, they got either 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah. So we also made some grant funds, went to Megan and for her business.
So she's a previous guest on the podcast as well. So yes.
Awesome. Yeah. And then a restaurant out of the Marion community, Goldfinch Tampa Eatery, was also a finalist. And then a tire and service repair business in Avoca, Iowa, Western Iowa, was another finalist this year. So just really great. Like I said, you learn so much about these small businesses, and they are putting their heart and soul into everything they do, and their passion is fabulous. And so that's really been one of the most favorite things of my job in the past 10 years, has been able to help those businesses just take their plan and their vision to the next level. And we have a small grant fund that helps them do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you were this whole position, you're only working within Main Street communities, though, at that point, right?
Yes, at that point.
Okay.
Yep, just within Main Street communities.
Yes, and so there's yeah, like you said, there's lots of hoops that kind of have to be jumped through in order for a community to even be eligible to be a Main Street America community, right?
That's correct.
There's certain, like you said, funding requirements, staff requirements, all the things. Maybe not entirely possible for all communities.
And
it's
it's
reality
not the
of
right
it.
fit for every community. And so I think that was one of the things that attracted me about the Empower job is that, we're working in communities regardless of if you're in the Main Street program or anything. If you just have population under 20,000, we're here to help you. And so that's what really attracted me to the position. So now that's what we're doing. And we just launched 3 new grant programs last week that are helping to lift up rural businesses in Iowa, and super excited about these opportunities for folks.
Yeah. So talk me through some of those grant programs. Like what, do you want to just go? We'll just go through them one by one, so we can cover them all. So whatever one you want to start with, go for it.
So this is what we call our Boost for Business. It's our Rural Innovation Grant Program. And this year there are 3 different focuses. And so we, the task force over this summer really took a lot of time to rethink the Innovation Grant Program. And so we had lots of input sessions with the Lieutenant Governor and with our partners across the state. We talked to small business owners and said, what are the challenges? What are, the areas? And so one of them that rose to the top was rural grocery, which
near and dear
to my heart. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because I do understand the struggles that the independent have out there. But over and over again, this just became, and I was the person that, if a small grocery store was closing in the state, the call would come into our office and they would be like, oh, Robin, you need to go talk to them. And, it was breaking my heart every time I'm going to talk to a grocery store that is like, well, we just can't make it. We're going to have to close our doors. And so this program, businesses, rural independent grocery stores, if they're in a community less than 20,000, or small chains, so if they have 10 or fewer locations, so somebody like a Brothers Market or somebody like that could apply to this program as well. They can apply for up to $25,000 to look at new delivery methods or improvements that they need to make to their grocery stores. So, we want there to be a little bit of innovation. So maybe it's something like grocery lockers, which we do have a store in Western Iowa that received our grant funds a couple of years ago, and they created a grocery locker program where they have lockers in a different community and they deliver groceries to those lockers where people in that community can then just go there and pick up their groceries. So we're looking at things like that. We're looking at, maybe electronic shelf tags, which is a really new technology, which really helps independent grocery stores have the correct pricing the minute their truck arrives at their door, because the margins in a grocery store are super, super narrow. And if you don't have your pricing right, you can be losing money really quickly. And so some of the new technology out there is electronic shelf tags. But again, that's an expensive investment for an independent. So we would help with that. If they're wanting to add new product lines and they need, new equipment or new display things, if they're looking to all those sorts of things, maybe they're looking to update a website and be able to offer ordering online and pickup or delivery within their small community. But again, there's an expense with all of that technology and whatever. We would support those types of applications. So that's one of the focuses that I'm super excited about, just because I know how hard it is. And we have seen many we've had a lot of conversations with people and just really felt like this was a really good target area for that.
Yeah. Well, and that's where we sit here in Collins, just 5 miles down the road in Maxwell. The Logston grocery store just closed this July. It's 2 brothers. They've been at it for 65 years. And so that community did lose an independent grocer just from retirement, and nobody wants to take over, and so it's real.
It is so hard, and our fear is that we're just going to have more and more food deserts, and people are going to have to drive farther and farther just to get fresh groceries, meats and fruits and vegetables and just everything. So anyway, we're hoping that this is really going to kind of address that gap and lift up some of those rural independents across the state. So that's one of the focuses. And then another focus is rural food producers. So we had a lot of meetings with our folks at the SBDC and Cirrus, and they pointed out to us that there has been huge growth in rural food producers across the state in the last year. And so these are those folks who are, maybe they're baking in their home kitchen and they're doing a farmer's market, or they're raising vegetables, or grapes, or who knows, a winery even qualifies, or
crickets.
As in crickets, it could be crickets, exactly. Up in my neck of the woods, we have a dairy farmer that does yogurt on their farm, which is fabulous. But and so one of the things that they pointed out to us is that sometimes when you're taking that step from, I'm doing the farmer's market, to now I want to maybe try to get into a grocery store or into some other type of store to sell my goods. Well, now there's all these requirements for packaging and labeling.
It's a big hurdle.
Yeah, it's just a big hurdle for folks to get over. So we want to help folks get over that hurdle. And so we have funding in place that will help them, if they want to work with Cirrus and we're going to cover their contact fees, or if they need to do new labeling, if they need to, maybe they need some little piece of equipment to help automate things a little more, this grant will help with that. And so, again, we're super excited about that because, if we can get people into brick and mortar stores, if we can help them take that next leap, it improves the vitality of our rural areas and all our small towns, and just gets more feet on the street, and again, gets more products into the marketplace. What we saw coming out of the pandemic is a lot of people now starting to care and wanting to know where their food comes from. And so we are here in the heartland. This is what we do in Iowa. We know how to grow stuff. And I think this is going to be super exciting. So really thrilled about the opportunity to help the small rural producers.
And is that up to $25,000 like
that grant is up to $5,000.
Okay.
And all of our grants do have a 50% match. So if you are asking for the full $5,000 as a small producer, you will need to have a project that's in excess of $7,500 because you'll need your $2,500 of local match in the project as well. So you do have to have a little bit of your own skin in the game, but that's how it is with every grant program. You've got to have some skin in the game.
And then the other thing, these are reimbursement.
These are
grants.
Reimbursement grants, yes, which
means
it's
important to note that.
Yeah, that is important to note. So yes, we're not going to just hand you a check right from the get-go. We do wish those blank checks still existed, but they do not, only in photo opportunities. So this is a reimbursement grant. So that just means that the business needs to expend the funds first, keep their receipts, keep their invoices, and then those are submitted back to us for reimbursement. But if there's somebody who's thinking or having some issues like, oh gosh, how am I going to, maybe I don't have the cash flow for that, definitely call us and talk through that, because what I found through working with the Open for Business program is many times you can get a small operating note from your local banker, and when they know that you have received a grant, many of them will sometimes do it at zero or no interest or a very low interest just because they know it's a cash flow issue. So I don't want folks to think, oh, I can't do this because I don't have that. There are ways and things that we can do to help you work through that process. And you can do up to 2 draws from us. So, if that's an issue, don't let it be. We'll help you work through that. So we really want people to take a look at the grant. And then the last one that we have is our what's called second stage growth businesses. And so this one is geared more toward those businesses that have been in business for a little bit, at least, 3 years, and maybe they're starting to think about selling outside the state of Iowa, or maybe they already are, but then they're struggling to identify new markets and how do we get our word out and where do we get good solid leads and that sort of thing. And so again, we're working with both Cirrus and the Center for Economic Gardening, which is based in Colorado, and they do a ton of in-depth research for companies and help them identify leads or different ways that they can do to kind of increase their market, get the word out there. So again, this last grant, it's up to $5,000 again, and we'll cover contract fees, for consulting and that sort of thing, and the research fees to really help them identify new markets and identify potential new customers for their products.
Yeah. So that, for me, for us, for our family would be the most interesting as we look at least my husband on his landscaping business side. We are just rounding through year 5 here. Just made a pretty large land acquisition from the city. And as we start looking at, expanding into potentially becoming a landscape supplier on the back, there's lots of things. So something like that, it's good to know that you guys have it for somebody who's not just starting up or somebody who's not maybe in the grocery business, but somebody who's been around for a while, is, entrenched in a rural community that is just looking to take the next step and try to figure out what that right next step is. So
yeah. And so again, a part of it comes from, as I mentioned previously, when you have good data, you can make better decisions. And so that's what we really want to help folks do with that, is really help them, those folks that know those, the Center for Economic Gardening and the staff at Cirrus at Iowa State, they know how to research, they know all the things that people are going to need. And so we just want to get people that knowledge and that data so that they can make good informed decisions and really grow their business. Yeah. So the second stage growth, they had to have been in business for about 3 years, 10 to 100 employees. All of our grant guidelines you can access from our website. So if you just go to the Center for Rural Revitalization and scroll down, you'll find all of our programs, and it will link to all of the handouts so everybody knows everything. We also just recorded a webinar last week about how to work through the program with all the guidelines. That link is available on our website. My contact information is there. Call me anytime. I'm happy to talk to anybody, talk through your project, kind of help you decide if it's a good fit before you spend all the time. The application's not super complicated, but again, when you're a small business owner, you're doing all the things. We don't want you to waste time on something if it's not going to be the right fit. We'd rather help you determine that from the get-go.
Right. And just because this one isn't a right fit doesn't mean that you aren't going to have another program coming up or another program already existing. Or it may not be a program that's under your umbrella. It may be under somebody else's. So
yeah, exactly. We just learned about some other producer grants that are available through the Heartland, which is kind of a 6-state regional program. They also just launched a grant. So I just sent that information to someone because I said, our stuff isn't the right fit, but you should take a look at this one. So yeah, that's part of what we are trying to do in Empower, is to help people connect the dots, help them get the resources that they need, because we really do have so many great resources in Iowa. But when that's not your arena, you don't know how to connect the dots and you don't know what you don't know. And so we really want to just help get people connected and get them the help that they can if we can find the right fit.
Right. Okay. So that's the first of the grants, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the next one?
Well, these are the 3 that we just launched.
Okay.
We just closed 3 other grants, but those are available on an annual basis. And that would be our childcare planning grant. For communities that are maybe, the issues that we see in the state are childcare and housing are 2 of the major issues. So we have 2 planning grants for both of those initiatives. If a local community wants to think about, gosh, we need more housing, how do we do that? We'll help with a study to help them understand what they need. Kind of the same thing with the childcare planning grant. If they need to expand childcare or just get a childcare center going, we'll help them with, again, the data and the expertise of a consultant to help them understand what do they really need, what can their communities support. So we have those 2. We also have a boost program, which is really for communities that are like, okay, we know we need to do something, but we don't know what it is. And, maybe you don't have a chamber of commerce. Maybe you just have a business group, or maybe you just have some volunteers that are like, hey, we just want to come together. We don't have any kind of formal organization, but we know we need something. And so the Boost program will send in a team of 3 to 5 experts from all across the state. We have lots of partners who have different areas of expertise. And we bring them into your community and they spend the day with you. They tour your community. They walk the streets with you. They sit down and talk to mayor, city council, residents, organizations. And then they will provide a short report back to you on, here's what we think are some great opportunities for you. And then that grant also comes with, so not only do you get the technical assistance visit, but then you also get $10,000 to spend toward the implementation of something that we suggest that we think you should work on. So that's another great app. We offered that application this fall. We'll open it again in the spring. And so we're hoping to award up to 4 communities, maybe 2 this fall and 2 in the spring for that opportunity. So
what kind of projects in the past have you seen get implemented by a Boost community? Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So sometimes it's, maybe it's they've got a trail close or a trail that comes through town, but they need wayfinding signage to direct people to their businesses. Sometimes it can be, working on things like, again, signage is one. Sometimes it's doing work and really taking a look at, do you have ordinances on the city books that are outdated? And, sometimes when those ordinances were created 50 or 60 years ago, they were applicable, but now they need to be updated. And so we know that there's cost involved with doing that. And sometimes it's also to help a city just update their community comp plan, their comprehensive plan. So it's those types of things. It can be signage. It can be public art. We're seeing people do a lot of trailhead work, bringing trails into their community. Sometimes it can be used for marketing, updating their marketing, and maybe it's branding for the community. Sometimes it can be for I know a couple of communities have been interested in doing one of the LED entrance signs to a community that just tells people things that are going on or directs them to the downtown, wherever. So it's a whole broad range of things. Again, we just want it to be related to something that was suggested in their visit.
And so what's required of do the communities, you're talking about your other grant programs, you have to have at least 50% match to receive the funds. Is that a similar structure with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every grant we have through Empower Rural Iowa has that 50% grant match.
Probably every grant through Iowa Economic Development, if I'm real honest.
Percentages are different all over the place depending on the program, but this is written in our administrative rules, so we are required to have that cash match.
Yes.
So, but again, that can come from different sources, so we can help you work through that. But you do need to have that match. Everybody's got to have a little bit of skin in the game.
Yes, I understand. I was just wanted to ask on that one, just in case there's any communities listening to this going, oh man, 10 grand, that'd be kind of nice. I could slot that in somewhere. Well, you got to have, which makes sense. You need to have buy-in from the community. That makes sense on you guys' side. And when you have a little buy-in, everybody comes together a little more.
And again, it's up to 10,000. So, if you identify a project that isn't that full amount, that's great too. But the award is up to 10,000.
And I think it is kind of important to point out on these too, you can't apply these grants retroactively. Like the work cannot begin until, you can't. If you're a grocery store, you can't implement a new electronic shelf tag thing and then be like, oh, I did this. Do you want to reimburse me for this? It has to be, you must be awarded the grant first and then begin to implement.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. So the 3 grants that we just opened last week are due October 25th of this year. Takes about a month to score the grants and decide. So we'll announce our winners by November 25th. And then your grant funding period, that's the time that you can start to spend money, starts on December 1st and goes through June 30th of 2026. So you do have about 18 months to spend the money, do your project, and that sort of thing. But you're correct. You don't want to spend any money until you have your award. There's a contract that you need to sign. Once your contract is signed and executed, then we say, go spend the money.
Yes. I just think, again, that's something important to point out. Because I've had people, because we received a community catalyst grant. We went through that whole process. We know what that's like, shall we say? And we've had people come to us and I've said, well, that's fine. You can apply for all these things. And they're like, well, I've already started. I'm like, no, you can't. Never mind. And so they're like, well, dang, even if it's a reimbursement, you can't start until everything is, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, shall we say.
Yeah. And so that's why I always say to people, if you're doing a project, reach out and ask some questions because there might be a program that can help you. Mm-hmm. And we certainly want to get you ahead of the curve and help you out if we can. But we need to know about the project in advance. So
right. Just a small timing piece there that I think is, like I said, it can save some heartbreak for some people. And there's some people that had they known, they would have maybe pumped the brakes and been like, well, let's go through the process and see if we can get some assistance, shall we say. So just an important piece to point out, like I said, from experience.
Yes.
Okay, so so we went over Boost. We went over the 3 that you just launched. Which one are we missing?
The other program that we have is we've been doing a lot of work with kind of employee ownership and business succession efforts. And so we have partnered with Advance Iowa, which is located at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, and the Drake Legal Clinic, which is part of the Drake Law School, and with efforts to help people. If there's somebody who's looking to transition, we have a lot of folks, as you just talked about the grocery store, it's just they're ready to retire and there's nobody to take over. And so people are just closing and walking away. We want to try to help that not be the case, that if somebody does want to transition, what we find and what I have seen in my experience is that most people don't have a plan. And that's, I always say to people, you should have an exit plan. As someone who went through that transition of transitioning a family-owned business to a new owner, and to be honest, my husband and I never had our store for sale. I mean, that was never our intention. We were approached by an outside entity, and that's how the transition happened for us. But we didn't have a plan together. But when we first started having those conversations, then we started to put a team together, because you want it to be a win-win for everybody. If you're the seller, you want to get out of that business what you've put into it. It's probably been your whole life's work. If you've been an independent and somebody who's owned your business your whole career, you want your community to win, because we don't want to lose all these wonderful businesses and the services that we have in our communities. But then you also want the new buyer to win too. They need to be set up so that they can be successful too. And so, as I said, we have partnered with the folks at UNI and the Drake Legal Clinic to offer those services so that people can, you can talk to someone who's a professional who can help say, hey, this is maybe what you want to do. Because I think the hardest thing is, as an independent, what's my business worth? Mm-hmm. And we all have an idea of, blue sky and our customer database and all of that, which, as I mentioned, when we sold our store, the gentleman who bought from us didn't want all the data related to the loyalty program. And that was an item that we had in our agreement that said, well, if you want that, it's going to be X amount of dollars for this. He said, I don't want it. Well, now that's off the table. So now you're going, okay, well, we're not going to make any money on that. But just knowing how to value your business so that, number one, you're not overpricing your business so you can be attractive to buyers, but also so that you're not leaving money on the table, that you're not giving your business away for less than it's worth. And so, the folks at both Advance Iowa and the Drake Legal Clinic, Drake Legal can help with the legal documents. Advance Iowa can kind of help you with getting that correct valuation. And so we just want to connect people to those resources if they want that. And then we've also been doing a lot of work with the Iowa Center for Employee Ownership, which is a new legal structure that has recently been available in Iowa to where employees can purchase a business from an owner. Again, there's lots of legal things and all those sorts of things that need to happen. But the Iowa Center for Employee Ownership, we are a partner in that effort, and that's also located at UNI. And so we can connect people if that's something that they want to take a look at. There's also a grant program available that will help fund part of that feasibility study for someone to understand, is that even a good fit for my business and my employees? So related to business succession, we have services that are helping with that as well.
Got it. And that is, transitioning a business at any point in your life, retirement, just moving on to different opportunities. It's not something that most small business owners go into, or business owners in general go into thinking, I need an
exit plan. But I every business that I counsel now, I said, okay, it's great that you're getting started, but what's the exit plan? And you're right. Some of them look at me like, well, I'm just getting started, Robin. Yeah. Why do I need an exit plan? Because sometimes you just never know.
Right.
And if that person, like for us, we never intended to sell, but when someone knocks on your door and says, hey, you have a really good business here, I'd like to talk to you, is it for sale? And at first we were like, no. And then, you kind of sit down and the first offer that came through, we're like, no. And 2 years later, they came back again, and we were like, okay, now we're getting close. And it ended up that sometimes we weren't planning to sell, but the deal was too good. It was like, okay, maybe this is the time for us to step aside. And like I said, both my husband and I worked for the gentleman that purchased from us. I worked for him for 2 years. My husband worked for him for 16. So, it's still, he was still involved. Just, he got to set better parameters. Like, he never really liked dealing with the employee stuff. So he said, I will do all of this. I will do the bookkeeping out, but I am not dealing with employee stuff. That's part of your deal. And, it worked out great. So,
yeah. Well, and it's like you said, it's many people don't even know what pieces of their business potentially have value, like what pieces of the business are actually like saleable. They might be valuable to you as a business owner, but only if you are the business owner kind of a situation. So, parsing out those pieces, separating it out. And I think you're right. I think, people don't think about it from the beginning, but if you build it correctly from the beginning, it makes an exit easier in the end. And, you think about that a lot in the startup world, Silicon Valley sort of startup world, but maybe a more what Silicon Valley would call a lifestyle sort of a business, a non-venture backed scalable sort of a situation. I don't think that's thought through as much, but I still think that there's, possibilities of.
Exactly. And it's just, helping people understand doing your bookkeeping correctly and just all of that. And, and in our instance, there were some things that we wanted to keep that were not, like, we still own the building that the grocery store is in. So we still have that. But, and sometimes your business owns vehicles and just getting people to understand, like, clean everything up before you get to that transition point so that if you don't want to sell your delivery vehicle, you got a van or whatever, if you want to keep that personally, then you got to get it off your books. And so again, having that plan, and I usually tell people it's 3 to 5 years of planning. That's how long it took us to buy the business from my in-laws, because you're trying to transition everything so that none of us are giving Uncle Sam any more money than we have to. And just having that really good plan so it's so clean for everyone, it just makes life much easier. When somebody calls me when I was the business specialist and they would be like, hey, I've got this business and they want to be done, at the end of the month. I'm like, I can't help them. It's a going out of business sales. Sorry. And we don't want that to happen. We want it to be a good. So, really the average time for someone to transition a business successfully is usually like 9 to 12 months. But sometimes depending on the complexity, it can be a couple of years if you need to clean things up, and because you want your books to look good, because somebody who's buying is going to want to see your books. So let's have them look good.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Okay. So those are the grant programs that you guys currently have. Are you looking at adding anything new in terms of grants, programs, areas of focus? I know you're very broad already in the areas that you have focus. You're more drilled down in things like rural grocery, independent grocery, things like that. But what's coming up on the horizon for Empower Rural Iowa?
I think we're always looking for, because part of this new executive order for us is for us to be more innovative. And so, again, that's why this innovation grant was totally revamped. Maybe in a year, it'll have a different focus. We don't know. We're always looking for new opportunities. We have our leadership program that will be happening at the end of October. So again, that's having a little bit of a new look. So I just think we have been challenged to always every year take a look at things and go, okay, are we serving, who we need to serve? What do we need to tweak? Do we need to add something new? Maybe this focus isn't where we need to be anymore. And then I'm sure, with new people who come into the program, we'll always be looking at opportunities. So that's one of the things I'm also excited about, is that we are really thinking about what do we need to do to better serve the residents of Iowa, especially in our rural areas. And this innovation grant that we redid with these 3 new focuses, we held off launching this program because we really wanted to research. And so the rest of our grants were all launched back in July, but we took this extra time to talk and to think things through. And so I think there will probably be changes in the future. We just don't know what those are yet.
Right. So the focus areas may change year to year, or they may stay the same. You know, it may be a case of you get feedback of this was great, we need more. Or it may be this area over here, you know, needs some attention. So yeah, I could see where that would be fun and interesting from a year-to-year dynamic for you working on it and managing it and everything else. And so people have, what'd you say, until end of October to apply for?
So the grant deadline is October 25th
at
4 p.m. in the afternoon. So yeah, they've got about a little over a month and a half to apply. And again, if anybody has questions, reach out to me. If you go to the website, my contact information is there, my email, my phone number. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions, because maybe you have a great fit and you're like, well, I don't know. And we just want to make sure we get you in the right program if it's a good fit.
Yeah. So what are you guys doing to get the word out about your grants?
We're doing stuff like this. We're going and talking to everybody we know. Yeah. So, I'm just talking to everybody. We're asking all of our task force members. We have 25 task force members located all over the state. We're sending it out through them. We're sending it out through county economic development directors, friends and family, just however we can get the word out. So share this podcast if you hear about it. Talk to somebody. If you have a friend who you think might be a good candidate, please share the information with them.
Yeah. And are you guys capped at the total amount? Everybody's always capped at the total amount of money you're going to give out. But do you know about how much you guys are going to be allocating?
Yes. So we have $200,000 between the three programs is what we have to award. So, but we're hoping to do at a minimum up to 4 grocery awards, maybe more. And then the other 2 grants are at $5,000 each. So, that's $100,000. I mean, that could be several applications.
Yeah. And like you
20 applications.
Like you said, though, too, it doesn't have to be the full amount. So it doesn't have to be the full $25,000. If you have a project that is $10,000 and you're a grocery store, great. Get $5,000 worth of that reimbursed, sort of a situation. It doesn't have to be that full amount.
Exactly. The minimum ask is $1,000, I believe. So, but yeah, it doesn't have to be that big of a project. So it just kind of depends on what the applications come in and look like. But we've got that $200,000 that we can move between the 3 programs wherever we see the greatest need. So,
and do you have a particular, for example, the Community Catalyst Grant, 40% of the funds are earmarked for communities of 1,500 or less. Is there anything like that in?
No, other than there are some bonus points. So based in each of the 3 programs, the bonus points are a little bit different, looking at their focus. So for example, I think on the rural grocery, if you are an independent, if you are a single store operator, one store, there's some bonus points for you. There's also some bonus points on some of them if you're in a community under 5,000. So again, just really hit the website, take a look at the different grant guidelines, because each of the 3 programs have a few little bit of different twists or tweaks that you need to meet. But just take a look. Everything is laid out there for you.
Yeah. And worst case, call you.
Yep. Worst case, call me. We'll talk through it.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of different resources for people if they are interested, or they, know somebody who would be interested. I think it's getting the word out and getting connected with the right people to tell you what the next move potentially needs to be. And like you said, if your programs aren't a good fit, of somebody that potentially would be. You can steer them in the right direction so that they're not wasting their valuable, time, money, resources. As as a small business owner, it's just you.
It's you and you're doing it all.
Yes,
and I get
exactly.
that. I get that.
Exactly.
So yeah, we don't want you to waste your time if it's not a good fit. So if you have questions and I've already taken several phone calls from folks, and I love that. Call, we'll talk through it, and sometimes it's a great fit, and sometimes you're like, yeah, this is a perfect fit for you. You really should take a look at this.
Yeah, she really means it when she says call her. And her phone number is on the website, so you can find it. She is very accessible. So I also did want to talk about, you have a little bit of side hustle doing some vintage and things like that. So woman after my own heart on that one. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, I do. I guess I joke that I have been a small business owner since I was in 3rd grade when I had my first paper route. And so, I've always loved to do stuff. So Like I said, my dad was a self-employed carpenter, so I grew up I kind of like the smell of sawdust, which is weird. But so I, several years ago, just started repurposing furniture. And in all reality, it probably started when my husband and I were first married. I was still in college. We didn't have any money. But, you're trying to just make your cute little first home look great. And so I've always been kind of a DIY type of person. And one of my mom's very best friends growing up was a woman like that who she could take something rusty and icky and just make it look fabulous. And I always loved her style and that sort of thing. So I started just kind of doing stuff and painting things for our house. And then my husband was like, wait a minute, you can't bring any more furniture in here. This is too much. And so a friend suggested, did you know there are these vintage markets? And I didn't even know they were existing. And then come to find out there was a friend close to where I lived who was doing a really great market in northeast Iowa. So I signed up for a booth, and 10 years later, I'm still doing that same market. So it's just kind of a little fun side hustle thing to do on a weekend here or there.
Yeah. So you focus mainly on furniture. Is there any particular kind of furniture that you prefer? Do you like to do dressers? Is it all over the place?
I just do a little bit of everything. I would say kind of my favorite is, we've done a lot of benches from old headboards so I kind of like to take something that you're I would just throw that away and I'm going to figure out how to turn it into something cool. So benches are one of my favorites. I also do farmhouse signs, and I also do sign parties for folks. So if, you can hire me to come in and have a little sign party with your girlfriends, and everybody goes home with a fun little something for their house. So yeah.
That's awesome. How often are you doing those classes?
Maybe I do one a month, one every other month. I really haven't done anything this summer because it's been busy, and we had a new grandbaby. And so I've been focusing on family, but, I think I have a sign class booked every month between now and Thanksgiving. So once a month.
'Tis the season though for the, signs and decorating and all of the things. So fall is here. The burr months, as they say.
The burr months. Yeah. I love them.
Yeah.
They're my faves.
That's awesome. Okay. So as you look forward in the next 12 months, what are you most excited about? It can be with, your position at Iowa Economic Development. It could be personal. It could be whatever.
Yeah. I really am excited about all the cool stuff that's happening in rural Iowa. I just think we have so much opportunity. Every time I meet a new business owner or I talk to someone like you and you learn more about what's happening across the state, what I want to do is just really focus and tell our story better, because I think in Iowa, we tend to be very humble and, don't really talk about yourself. And I mean, that's how I was raised. And, and I'm we don't need to just toot our own horn. We need to get the tuba out and just really let people know about all the great opportunities there are in rural. And I don't want to see our rural communities dying anymore. I think we're starting to see the pendulum swing back that other way. And I just really want to help do that, because even though I work in Des Moines during the week, I still have my home in northeast Iowa in the country on 20 acres, and I am never selling that house. That's where they're going to probably bury me. So I still want those small communities to be vibrant.
Right. I totally agree. I like it. Is there anything else you want to leave people with?
No, just visit and support your small businesses across the state. I think that's the big thing, is that especially as we go into this season, which is the fourth quarter, it can be a really make or break season for a lot of our independent business owners. And so if we all just supported one or two of them this holiday season, it could really make a difference. So go out and shop local, folks.
It is super easy to hop on Amazon and grab something and have it delivered to your door, but it's also a lot better to just take a day trip. Take a day trip to a little small town, or if you live in a small town and there's a business that you can support, it doesn't have to be a giant ticket item. It can be something small, and that will make a difference. So
that's for sure.
Totally agree. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with me.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.